Welcome to Scale Without Chaos, the podcast on business growth, visionary leadership, and scalable systems. Each week, you'll hear real stories, the messy parts, and the proven strategies that help leaders grow without burning out their team or themselves. And yes, you'll definitely hear a few spicy takes along the way. Here are some highlights from this week's episode.
You have to speak the language of the C-suite. You have to position it as an executive, which means you have to speak in outcomes more than you speak in price.
If you're in budget season and that is your one time to look at all of your strategy, you're already doing it wrong. Right. You're already behind the eight ball. And now, this week's episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Scale Without Chaos. I'm your host, Samantha Real, and today I'm joined by K.C. O'Rourke. I'm so excited to have you here, K.C., especially for this particular topic. K.C. and I'm going to let K.C. introduce herself, but K.C. and I are digging into budget season, like hardcore. It's been really interesting that everyone's kind of gone away for the summer, and now that it's September, everyone is jumping in with both feet. And so there's some things that I was seeing, some things that K.C.'s been seeing, and so we're going to help set everyone up for some success this budget season, because it's one of those areas where you can get into some great momentum or you can get trapped. So K.C., with that as kind of the intro of what we're going to talk about, would you mind introducing yourself, what you do, and actually some of your new endeavors? You've got some cool things happening with Sorted Collective.
Yes,
right?
thank
So
you.
please go ahead.
I'm K.C. O'Rourke. I'm a fractional chief marketing officer and public relations strategist, and I am the founder of KCLO Communications and a partner in a new collective called the Sorted Marketing Collective, where I've partnered with my digital and my brand team to really create a flagship 90-day sprint offer. So kind of a soup to nuts marketing officer, or you can hire me just to do your strategy and your PR and get everything aligned.
Yeah. And I mean, the expertise that you have in strategic communications is how you and I first got connected,
That's right.
which is really cool. And as communicators, I mean, PR in general normally has an interesting time during budget season. So I'm going to be excited to get your thoughts on some of these questions that
I'm excited to talk budget.
So yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things that I always find interesting. I think when we start talking about budget season, and I really need to get past this myself, but budget season can either bring like, yay, we're doing strategy and we're getting into goals for next year, or it can bring a huge amount of just dread and anxiety because you know you're going to be spending the next 4 months in meetings and digging into data points and trying to correlate all of these things that are just not connected in your current data set and figure it all out. And it's just, it's one of, like I said, I got to get over it. But this conversation,
I don't think you do, because I think it's just the way it is. I mean, stay strong, but it's tough sometimes.
Oh gosh, yeah. So let's get into it. So this episode is all about budget season reality checks, right? So what decisions are we making today that are ultimately going to show up in your results in June? And getting into that. So as a budget season, a lot of people focus on budgets as a numbers exercise. Right. It is driven by finance, driven by our CEOs. We come in and we all get together and talk about what are our goals going to be for next year, even longer if you're at that level as an executive team, starting to put some of those things together, and then you start backing into numbers, right? You start backing into it. And sometimes, like I said, people take this as a numbers exercise. They're going line item by line item on the budget. And then other times, people use it as an excuse to completely rip and replace their entire strategy. And I think we've all been on both sides of those equations. And I think it's really easy to forget that as we're going through this, budget has a built-in time delay. As I mentioned earlier, we've got things that we're going to be doing today are going to show up in June. And so hiring that impacts budget. So programs, that impacts hiring decisions, that impacts pretty much everything, right?
Mhm.
So we don't want people to get into a situation where they're underestimating budget, treating it like a line item exercise, but also not overestimating it and completely doing a rip and
Right.
replace. KC,
Yeah, that's a lot.
can you talk to me? Yeah. I just set that up in like there's so many ways that we can take that just that intro, but talk to me about some of the things that you're seeing right now. Are you getting more line item folks? Are you getting more rip and replace folks? What are you seeing right now as general populace in terms of marketing
Um, w-
budgets?
what I'm seeing right now is people realizing they have budget left and a mad dash to spend it.
Ooh.
It's
Whoa.
Yeah, it's been I feel like people have been hesitant, and now they're like, "Oh, it's Q4. Oh, I have some money left allocated." And so now the trick is to get them, to be forward thinking and strategic in terms of that spend and making sure, like to your point, we understand what the business goals and objectives are, and we're going to backfill that. But to your point, you do get both of those of this is a line item. Here's what you have to spend. Go with God. Best of luck to you. And that's really hard. And then you have that, we don't think anything's working. We're going to replace everything. Shock and awe, scorched earth style, which is scary and not great either. So I think you and I would kind of come to the middle and say, budget season is a great time for some analysis, a great time, as my
Mhm.
teenagers say, be so for real about what's working, what's not working, what best practices are in general, how the market has changed. I think for you and I, we feel like we're living a little bit in the wild, wild west with AI right now in terms of
Always.
what's coming
Mhm.
down the pike, what the changes are. So, helping companies align the money that they can allocate to marketing, using it in the most efficient, effective way possible is where we come in and really try and help people. Um, don't ever go scorched earth if you can help it. It's like the rip. I mean, oh, it gives me such heartburn.
I think anyone who's been through scorched earth, especially multiple times, would say the exact same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
For
I
sure.
talked to an executive today who's in the midst of a big migration, and um you really only want to replace what you have to replace when it needs to be replaced, and understand that, to your point, some of these marketing initiatives do take time. I know we say all the time there's no silver bullet. There's nothing that you're going to spend on right now that's going to have immediate ROI. Now, are there quick wins? 100%. We can find some quick wins.
Mhm.
But when you're looking at strategic marketing, you are planning for June, you are planning for December, you are planning for year 2, year 5, and really trying to be proactive and smart about where your spend is going based on the nuances of who your audience is, what industry you're in, what your capabilities are, what your internal team is. It's so nuanced budget season, and there's so many factors that go into an effective budget spend. It's just, a lot of education into the C-suite about how to do that, what makes the most sense, and then
Absolutely.
educating on it's not a silver bullet. It's not gonna be tomorrow. Like, I'm not gonna fix this one thing and all of a sudden it's gonna be just cash flow galore. It's a pace. It's a marathon a lot of times, unfortunately.
It absolutely it is. And before we get into that part, so the
Mhm,
the lag,
mhm,
talking about what we're doing next June, I want to talk about what so if you're in budget season and that is your one time to look at all of your
mhm.
strategy, you're already doing it wrong.
Right.
Right? You're
Oh my
you're
gosh.
already you're already behind the eight ball. You're already doing it wrong. And so one of the things that I always have done with my teams and anyone that I'm coaching, working with is use the start, stop, continue
Mhm,
model on a monthly basis.
mhm,
People hate me for it sometimes because there's so much I don't want to add more overhead and more work to folks, but
mhm,
if you're not looking at things on even if it's just a checkbox exercise, a monthly basis to say, yes, this channel is working. Here's the goals and here's what we're seeing and here's the momentum or here's the
Mhm.
one thing within it that we should get rid of because this isn't helping us to reach our goals. If you're not doing a start, stop, continue exercise, and I do mean every person on your team
Mhm.
towards their goals, towards their KPIs,
Mhm.
that's you're already on the back foot. You're already there. And I think
Absolutely.
as a leadership team, it's helpful. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just completely agree with you. I mean, there's like a lot of A/B testing that goes into it. There's a lot of, is what's not working specifically. If you're doing, start, stop,
Mhm,
you can say, all right, is it the messaging? Is it the platform? What is it? And analyze it in real time and then pivot if you need to, or pivot where you need to. Because oftentimes what
mhm.
I see is it's not it's not just one thing that's broken, or it may not be what you think
Never.
it is. So we have to kind of be like
Exactly.
living in reality in real time to say, all right, something's misaligned. What is it?
Mhm,
You know?
mhm. Mhm. And it always comes down to, this I'm ho always comes down to people, process, or systems. It's in one of those
100%.
3 categories, people, process, like, it's one of those 3,
Mhm.
and, helping by doing some type of an analysis on a monthly basis, and
Mhm.
like I said, people hate me for doing it on a monthly basis because it seems so redundant,
Mhm.
but if you're not looking at it that closely, things just lag too long,
Mhm.
and then, like I said, if you're in budget season and that's the time when you're looking at your
Mhm.
strategy and doing a start, stop, continue, then you're
Yeah,
in
you're
trouble.
behind the 8 ball.
You are going to end up yeah, you're going to end up doing so much more work than you need to be, and that is why I think a lot of people end up doing rip and replace
Yeah.
because they don't talk about strategy all year, and then they're
Right.
like, "Oh, look at all these things we learned all year. We can pivot and go this completely different direction."
Well, and then you can
It's
be,
crazy.
realistic in what your ask is. In terms of if you're
Mhm.
fighting for budget, which in marketing we often do, you can say, here's what I need to continue at this level. Here's what I need to take us to the next level and really go to battle for your team to say, we know what the spend is and we're really comfortable with what it is. And here's what you've gotten for it.
Mhm, for sure. So let's pivot
Okay.
back to talking
Mhm.
about the spend that we're making now
Right.
is going to show up in June. Why do you think there is a disconnect there? Like what it's there's so much pressure, I think, from the board,
Yeah.
from the leadership team, from all of there's a lot of pressure to get results instantly, but why is there a disconnect when we know we have sales cycles, we know we have lead cycles, all of those things, it's really hard and it's mostly forgotten during budget season that that's going to happen.
Always. You know, Like I said, if I had a dime for every time I had a client call and want a silver bullet, and I mean, I've been asked for everything from a billboard, which made no sense, to, there's just a belief that there is something shiny. And then there's also a belief, I think, in our industry that anybody can do it. And if I have these thoughts
Yes.
that, it must be easy because I feel like I understand it in the C suite, I feel like, and there's a lot of projection and misunderstanding of the length of time things actually take if you're doing it well. And I always say it's not sexy, but it is best practices over and over and over again in perpetuity until you died. I mean, that's really
Exactly.
what is happening. And you have to play the long game. I mean, it's just what it is.
Mhm,
Like I said, we can normally find some quick wins. We can find some awareness generation. We can find some PR. We can get some earned media. We can do some things. But in terms of
mhm,
overarching strategy, moving your organization forward in a way that's meaningful, it's a long-term strategic game. It just is.
mhm.
And I think you look at the
And
brands
it
who have
is
done, oh, sorry, go
oops.
ahead.
No, 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 keep
No, I was just
going,
gonna say, and you look at the
please. You're on a
brands,
roll.
I'm preaching to the choir, I know. But I mean, if you look at the brands who have had long-term success throughout their business life cycle, it's because they deeply understood their audience. They deeply understood where their audience was, and they understood how to meet them there repeatedly over and over and over again. And that's what we're talking about,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm,
it's not we're not always meeting our customer when they're ready to buy, but it's nurturing that lead until they're until they're ready. And then we're top of mind. And we built that trust.
Mhm. And taking it to the anyone can do it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like anyone can hop in and do marketing, anyone.
Yeah.
It is so much more difficult
It's so
to
hard.
be simple than it is to be complicated, right? So much more. And I think people end up seeing the end result. They see that really simple messaging
Mm-hmm.
and completely forget that it actually took 7 whiteboard sessions, some
Mm-hmm.
focus groups, all kinds of different things
Yeah.
to actually get to that one sentence that is going to resonate the most with customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they see that one sentence and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can absolutely do that. That
Easy.
should be able to go quickly."
That probably took
Yeah,
5 minutes for
it's
you to
easy.
come up with, and no data points whatsoever, just feelings. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot that goes
All of
into
it.
it and a lot of strategy and I think executive thinking that goes into it. And, I think we're lucky when we're working with a C suite that understands, and it's a challenge when
Yeah.
you're working with a C suite that doesn't.
Yes.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that a little bit too. So, helping our fellow marketers
Yeah.
who get stuck in a situation
Mhm.
where the C-suite is currently not understanding. So there's some type of a misalignment. We need to build a bridge
Right.
and help with that bridge.
Mhm.
How would you build that bridge? How would you start to build that bridge?
You have to speak the language of the C-suite. You have to position it as an executive, which means you have to speak in outcomes more than you speak in price. You have to speak in not deliverables, but what the strategic outcome you anticipate being from this specific buy is, because that's what they care about, right?
Mhm.
You have to be able to be forward thinking enough to say, okay, by doing these things, by doing X, Y, and Z, here's the outcome I expect because I'm a professional and I know, I've done it before.
Right.
Hmm.
Right, exactly. And what about for we've heard a lot about brand
Right.
recently. We won't get into everything around Cracker Barrel right now, but heard a lot
A
about
lot.
brand and how valuable brand is.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things that everyone is not forgetting about, because as marketers, we know inherently at our core, because we've been through and we've got the scars to prove it,
Hmm.
how difficult it is to prove the value of brand
Right.
for anyone who is trying to get into the C-suite this in the next few months and talk about increasing the amount of budget that they need for brand.
Right.
How on earth would you go about that? That's a big one.
That's a big
That's a
one,
big one.
and
And
it's nuanced. I mean,
okay, so let's dig into it. Let's do it.
yeah, I mean, so brand and I come from, traditional PR as well. And so it's an area that's sticky, right? There's not always attributable outcomes just to this one thing. And in marketing,
Spaghetti.
it's yes. And when we were in school, I think people would say it takes about 10 touches, right? That integrated marketing
Yes.
strategy is going to take about 10 touches for your customer to be like, yeah, that's what I want. I think now it's probably closer to 25, if not more. I haven't heard recently what people are saying it is, but the amount of touches you need to your customer for them to be like, I get who you are and I'm now going to purchase that is just more. It just takes longer. So when you are looking at brand, you are actually looking at a bunch of different touch points and not all
Mhm.
are attributable. So, you're looking at how much you're showing up in the news, how much your competitors showing up in the news compared to you. You're looking at brand recognition. You're looking at market share. You're looking at all of these things
Mhm.
that attribute to the success of your brand. And some of them are a little, woo woo, as people say. Yeah, I can
Mushy.
tell you media impressions, but I can't necessarily, unless I'm in your CRM and unless I'm in your website as well, it's hard to attribute what touch points are driving which traffic. So we say, I come from the Got Milk school of integrated marketing. Like all hands need to be washing together, all hands need to be rowing in the same direction. It takes a lot of different integrated tactics to solidify your
Mhm.
brand and to move the needle on it. It's how I've always looked at it.
And to me. I completely agree.
Hmm.
So we're very
Hmm.
very much aligned in terms of the school of thought. Like that's just what it needs to be. But
Hmm.
to make it even more complicated,
Yeah.
right? In B2B, which is primarily
Hmm.
the audience that we're talking
Hmm.
to right now. So in B2B, we have it used to be 5 to 7
Hmm.
buyers that were associated with any particular purchase in a B2B environment.
Yeah.
So let's just take that on the low end, even though we know that's not
Hmm.
true anymore,
Right.
5 to 7 buyers. Um, take that on the low end, and then you have 5 to 7 different buyers' journeys
Hmm.
for each one of those things that you're just talking about for
Right.
one customer,
Right.
at least 5 to 7, right?
Right.
And so it just gets so much more complicated. And I think now we're probably into the point where we're overwhelming everyone with
Yeah.
how difficult this
Including
challenge can
ourselves.
be.
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah, so to get, but that's the reason why these investments that we're making today, that we're strategizing today, are going
Hmm.
to show up in 6 to 9 months. That's exactly why. It's because
Hmm.
everything is going to take time to go through that whole process. You have to work it through.
You have to work it through and you have to see it from a 30,000-foot view, right? I think there's danger in being too far in the weeds and letting yourself not see the forest through the trees, like having a clear understanding of where it is that you want to go and a clear understanding of, the money and the resources you have available to get you there. But I think,
Mhm.
smart marketers are, to your point, thinking 6 months ahead, thinking 12 months ahead, thinking 2 years ahead and building strategy that's not just for the next 6 months. Ideally, we're building strategy that's going to layer foundationally on each other. I like to think of it as compounding interest in terms of our efforts.
Absolutely.
So, our efforts in
Mhm.
this budget strategy are long term. They are going to affect 6 months, but
Mhm.
hopefully, when we're talking budget again next year, we're building on the foundation that we've already established.
Mhm. It can be a challenging exercise, but once it's actually done, it makes a lot of sense. So to your point
Hmm.
around you keep building, right? So it's building
Hmm.
blocks of strategy. In
Hmm.
order to break it down, I actually use a pyramid analogy. So
Okay.
it's what is our lowest hanging fruit, right? So what are the
Mhm,
things that this is going to make us successful first? So so
mhm,
what is that? Okay. We identify that, we work towards it. What is the achievement criteria, right? So once
mhm,
we've achieved that, then we move to the next one. Okay, so if you're talking about marketing and you're trying to expand your reach, it's all right, our email database, those are our closest folks. Those are the ones that we're going to
mhm.
talk to first. Then we go into our website visitors and then we go into events. So you just keep building, right?
Right.
It's the same thing for budget strategy. It's the same
Yeah,
thing for company strategy.
yeah.
And when you start to put everything together into a framework where there's exit criteria for each step,
Mhm.
then it starts to make everyone feel, including maybe a C-suite member that likes to do a rip and replace, that there's a plan moving out above
Yeah,
and beyond those just near-term objectives.
yeah, there's a method to your madness, right? There's a method to our madness that
Yeah.
we there is structure to it, even though sometimes it feels like, to your point, scale without chaos, right? Sometimes it does feel chaotic, but I think if you're doing it right and you have a good marketing strategist on your team, that is exactly what they're doing, is they're taking you through the
For
exercise to
sure.
build your brand for the long term. And protect your brand for the long term,
Exactly.
quite frankly.
Right? That's even more important
Mhm.
now, I feel like, especially with some of the technology that we have available to us today.
It's wild.
One more yeah, wild, I don't even know if wild describes it. I don't think there's a word yet.
Mhm.
It
It's a
describes the
lot.
day-to-day of what we're living in.
Yeah.
Yes. One more question.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you're coming into this budget season and folks are saying, hey, we have money left.
Yeah.
How would you recommend testing new things, testing new partnerships, testing like
Mhm.
what if you had extra money, if you found yourself with that
Mhm.
champagne problem, and
Yeah.
I understand that it's nuanced depending on the business, but
Right.
what would you recommend to folks?
Well, what I'm seeing is most of the time, well, for this year, it's been an anomaly because I feel like people did not spend due to hesitation. Like they weren't sure about,
Mm,
for whatever reason. I feel
mhm.
like marketing, like there was some pullback this year. And
Yes.
now the market
Yes.
is getting flooded with, oh, okay, I'm ready to do this now. So in that case,
Mhm.
again, depending on what your goals are and how successful you've been to date in terms of just kind of setting and forgetting your marketing department, I would say,
Mhm.
for me, the first step is always analysis. It's always a diagnostic
Mhm.
of what's working, what's not working, and then what's next. So
Mhm.
I would,
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's how I think of it. So working with B2B primarily companies, the people I'm seeing right now that are coming in are piecemealing their marketing. It's very fragmented. It's very misaligned. I have everything from a company that's huge, that's not really being strategic about their spend. And I have a company that's very, very small that, the CEO and founder is still doing a lot of stuff. Then it's,
Mhm.
so it's that Pinocchio becoming a real boy problem. So, depending on what it is, a lot of times it's that diagnostic strategy messaging, you know, making sure everything's aligned and then taking the product service or, external vehicle and amplifying what it is we need to amplify to who we need to amplify it to. So I know it's so
Think
nuanced and it's such a cop out to be like, it just really depends.
Oh,
It's
no, that's a completely acceptable
mhm.
completely acceptable answer. I think no matter what, I think it always comes down to the same thing as small,
Mhm.
consistent steps towards your
Yeah.
goals will there that is always going to beat
Mhm.
a viral post. There is no silver bullet.
There's no
It's
silver
small,
bullet
consistent steps.
forever and ever.
And the small, consistent forever and ever, right?
Mhm.
Can we just have that on repeat
Mhm.
somewhere? There is no silver bullet. Just
No.
it's the small, consistent steps,
Mhm.
pushing that flywheel, right? I know
Mhm.
lots of people use the flywheel analogy, but pushing that
Mhm.
flywheel and gaining momentum
Yeah.
only comes from consistent steps, finding the things that work. And that's what really budget season gives us the opportunity
Mhm.
to do is look at things that are working, look at things that aren't working. Do not completely rip and replace your entire marketing and company strategy based off of the last 12 months. Like really dig in and
Mhm.
look at it. And that all starts with analysis.
It all starts with analysis. And to your point, hopefully you've been analyzing all year long. In the
Please.
event in the event you haven't had a marketing strategist or fractional CMO or someone helping you with that, it can feel like a lot, but you have to start somewhere in this
Mhm.
analysis
And
always.
exactly.
Otherwise you're wasting your
Analysis
money.
always.
Yeah, analysis always.
I think
Otherwise you're throwing pasta on the wall and praying that it sticks. I say that all the time and I see it all the time. And what works for your competitor may not make sense for you, and that's okay, but we need to know what makes sense for you.
I think we
I
should do
see
an
by your
entire
face.
separate episode. Yeah. We should do an entire separate episode just talking about what works for your competitor doesn't work for you. I think that would be beautiful. We
I
need to
mean, it
do
might
that
just be
at some point.
therapy
Casey.
for us. Therapeutic.
Agree. We should just get a whole bunch of folks together and say, share your story.
Yeah,
Talk to me about this particular thing because it's very true.
it's
But
very true.
excellent. Well, Casey, our conversations are always great. I always love chatting with you, and
Likewise.
especially budget is always something it's a fun topic. Things
It is.
there's always something to bring up. So I appreciate you joining me for this
Oh my
episode.
gosh, my pleasure. Always.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to Scale Without Chaos. If today's episode sparked new ideas or gave you a fresh perspective, do me a favor. Hit that follow button, subscribe for new episodes, and share this with someone who's going through what we talked about today. This podcast is all about visionary leadership, sustainable business growth, and the systems that make scale possible. For more content, free resources, and behind-the-scenes insights, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow along on Instagram at Scale Without Chaos, and subscribe to the newsletter. Until next time, keep building.